Hey, folks. My name is Akash. How's everyone doing today?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for coming for a small talk today. As I said, my name is Akash. I'm a senior engineering manager at Webflow. And many of you who don't know Webflow, Webflow is a visual development platform for bringing development superpowers to everyone without writing the code. I lead our payment and subscription org at the company. In addition to that, I also lead our technical interview practice. I have been leading and building teams for about 5 years as an engineering manager. And before that, I have worked as an IC, individual contributor, for about 10 years. In these 15 years or so, I think I have been part of about hundreds of interviews. And being on both sides of the table, I felt many times that the questions in the interviews were not really able to gauge the right skills that are needed for being a good engineer. And many times the questions are very abstract or they were very specific. So I decided to do something about it. Right before Webflow, I used to be at Asana, where I led their apprenticeship hiring program. And I've been keenly interested in improving the interview experience for managers, as also for candidates. So I'm going to share what we're doing at Webflow about it.
Thanks, Akash. Hi, everyone. My name is Sargun. I am the founder and CEO of Byteboard. Prior to starting Byteboard, I was actually an engineer at Google, and I'd spent months studying cracking the coding interview, which should be familiar to most of you in this room, and was quite surprised when I learned that all that months of training, and eventually I got the job, but it wasn't useful once I actually got to Google. I used to joke that I actually Google things on how to build things at Google, and that was like the most important skill that I had. And so that really ignited the question on like how should we be effectively interviewing candidates that's fair, that's effective, that's also efficient for engineering teams. And that's where conversations with engineering leaders like Akash, who were trying to build really, really great software engineering and technical engineering teams, and it starts from the interview process itself, the stage that you put up in front of your candidates, what questions you ask, what types of candidates that you bring forward. So for the last 5 years, I actually built Byteboard inside of Google. I didn't build Google, and spun out Byteboard 2 years ago, and have been working with more and more engineering leaders everywhere from Webflow, Figma, and also smaller startups on how to effectively build out an interview process. So I didn't think that technical interviewing was the hill I was going to die on, but this is like my passion, and this is something that I have spent a lot of time on, and I'm excited, especially today, to talk about how, with the introduction of AI tools, how it's impacting hiring and technical interviewing, how folks like Akash are addressing that in their interview process today. So excited for the conversation.
All right, let's get started. Cool. I think this was the slide, the last one. Cool. So I think we can get to the next one. There we go. We cannot start talking about technical interviews without some LeetCode questions, right? So this one is a pretty fun one. I'm not going to ask you to solve this, but I want you to read. Just take a couple seconds to look at this. This is one of those questions listed as a hard on LeetCode. And the interesting thing about this is most of us here may not be able to get this done in 45 minutes, and which is OK. It does not make us bad at our jobs. However, even if you do get this done in 45 minutes or a little bit more, it only just tells that you have been spending, if not weeks, maybe months, getting really good at this LeetCode-style data structure and algorithms. That does not tell the full story. So we're not going to be solving this, but just wanted to bring what kind of questions typically people ask when they think of coding interviews, technical interviews for engineering hires. And so we're not going to solve this, but I just wanted to share the question that we have.
So one of the things that this brings up, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen this meme too, is even before the age of ChatGPT and Copilot, coding tests and LeetCode type questions weren't great questions to begin with on how to interview engineers. We don't, as engineers, work in a vacuum where we have like really specific, contrived questions. We have a lot of complexity in our day-to-day. And when I actually look at this meme, it's not the fact that like, oh, interviewing questions are really big and messy, and that's not what we do on the job. We're just doing simple fixes. That's not what I see from this meme. It's the fact that like when we're in an interview, we're taken away from our resources, our tools that we actually use to build and like work on complex problems taken away from us. And the fact is, in the real world, you've got Stack Overflow open, you can Google stuff, you can ask your peers on how to do something, you're collaborating, and that's how you actually build and solve for complex problems. And so now with the introduction of ChatGPT, we're kind of actually just, it's highlighting this problem that's existed for a very long time, that tasks like the one that Akash just pointed out are tasks that ChatGPT can actually solve quite quickly. And even if you say, well, my team, my organization doesn't ask like LeetCode type questions. We actually ask them to explain their code base. ChatGPT is getting smarter every day, right? It can actually discuss trade-offs to your solutions, and you can ask it to do that. It can give you the big O notation of a solution. It can actually generate alternative solutions in different languages for you. And it can also explain code in English, which it, in fact, did for the question that we asked you earlier. It actually generated this and a deep explanation quicker than I could probably have initialized that left pointer. And the fact is, it got away from us a while ago now that, like, what are we actually trying to assess? Like, we got lost kind of along the way. What are we actually trying to assess as engineering managers when we're trying to build out our technical teams? Are we looking for how well they are at solving puzzles or rote memorization, or like how much dedication did they put into LeetCode? Is that what you're really weighing? Or are you actually looking at how good this individual is for the job at hand, for the tasks and the products and features and the roadmap that you have at hand? So we're going to dig into this a little bit more, but ChatGPT is accelerating the fact that our collective understanding that coding challenges aren't good assessments for the expertise and skills that we're looking for, and there, in fact, is a better way to do this.
All right. So when I started digging into technical interviews and how can I revisit this topic and improve in a way that actually is good experience for both candidates and for managers, and we get strong signal. And I realized talking to engineering leaders in my company and in industry, there were two schools of thoughts, where people really wanted to stick with LeetCode no matter what. And because that's the industry standard right now, and that's how we know how someone's fundamentals in computer science are good or not. The other part was completely stop coding interviews because they may not be equitable, and it may not be fair to people who are not able to spend a lot of time after hours preparing for that. I really feel you cannot have one or other. We need to find a Goldilocks solution, which is using some kind of assessment that gives us a chance to think about problem-solving skills and implementation skills, but also is not really taxing where you have to prepare for interview months in advance. So this is how the process looked at Webflow before I took over the interview practice there. One of the things I want to highlight here is pretty standard with the recruiter screen. And then a hiring manager like myself will jump in, will try to assess person's resume and see if they might match the team, the role we have in the team. And then next round will be the technical interview. That is with an engineer on my team. They will spend about 60 minutes going over a LeetCode-style question. It has no context, but it can be done in an online IDE. Not only the 60 minutes I spent from engineer, I spent an additional 60 minutes to fill the scorecard, what they observed, write the notes, and then there will be debrief huddle. So there is more time needed. All of these really adds up if you're trying to scale up really fast or build a team. After that, when this person who clears the technical interviews finally gets to the virtual on-site round, at that point, we're going to have system design. We will have another coding question, because, hey, we're hiring a software engineer, right? And then we will have a project execution, because we also want to get signal, how does this person perform in a project setting? We also have a teamwork interview. We want to see if they can work with other people in the team or not. So this process was working, so to speak. However, we found it could be much more efficient. So a couple of things I mentioned in this process. First is the questions that were being asked were very hypothetical and in isolation. They do not really provide any context. They just know if this person is good at data structures or not. going through these several candidates who will go through the system but may not really convert to a good hire or a hire at all, it really makes for a long hiring cycle. That really adds up the time, and you could even end up hiring someone who is not a good fit. Candidates do not like it. It's a pretty known fact in the industry now. And every time my engineers are spending their time in interviewing, they're not building software. So it's pretty expensive for us in multiple ways. And then the lack of trust. We still don't know if when they did the question, whether they did that or they were using ChatGPT or some other AI tool. We have seen examples where people are able to use AI very successfully in many of these scenarios. So we knew we want to change something.
So we've had this problem before ChatGPT existed as well. A mentor of mine who's a VP of engineering, he actually took this bet on with his EA, and who said that she would be able to pass the first round screen for Amazon software engineering position. She studied up, she used Google, and she was actually, in fact, able to pass the first round screen because it prompted them with some very basic contrived questions that you can look up very easily. Woven actually did a very similar study more recently on having someone with no technical background take LeetCode hard questions and do some scenario-based questions leveraging ChatGPT, and in fact was able to pass all of those types of questions. What this is proving out to us is, one, that it's not the fact that ChatGPT, because of ChatGPT, we're trying to add more rigorous questions, and that's the problem. A lot of times when I'm talking to engineering leaders, they're like, well, now that folks are starting to use ChatGPT, I'm going to record their screens, I'm going to do a retina scan, and do all sorts of things to make sure that they don't go that way. And that's the wrong direction to take. When you're adding things like, you're doing more in-person interviews, that's a cost to your organization. When you're blocking candidates from using their own IDE experience or building them or having to do whiteboard type interviews or pen and paper type interviews, which unfortunately do exist in some cases, you're not actually gaining, one, trust from the candidate, which is the first step in the interview process, their first introduction to the company. So you're starting from a place of distrust. But moreover, the second point is you're actually severely limiting the candidate's ability to be able to showcase their skills effectively. And you're adding unnecessary stress and unfamiliarity to the job itself, which studies have shown by adding stress to interviews, which are already very stressful, it impacts candidates' abilities by over 2 times on how well they perform on the interview itself. So what that means for you is you're spending all these cycles and time trying to identify great engineers, and you're actually leaving a lot of false positives at the door. So investing in anti-cheat techniques end up being a band-aid solution at best, and you're just going to end up playing a catch-up technique. So the solution isn't around oh, ChatGPT makes it easy for you to solve my interview questions. The fact is that the real issues around the questions that we are actually asking are not getting to what makes a good software engineer. And the questions you should be focusing on are on the skills that to you equate to what makes a good software engineer, which Akash will lead us into.
Cool. So that's a really good segue. What does make a good software engineer? I think everyone will have their own definition. They will think about their favorite engineer, talk about the rock star developer they have on the team, talk about the 10x. But one of the things I feel after being in industry for a while, the good engineers ask the right questions. They will clarify the problem. They will work on the right solution that is needed, not just start to work on the most complicated things. They're also really good at learning the context of the business, what they're building, why they're building. Not only they will implement a solution, but they will even suggest alternate solutions, sometimes that might be even cheaper for engineering cost. And I feel like the best engineers I've worked with, they are the ones who are able to not problem solve, but also look at logically in the context and provide different alternate solutions. What works, what doesn't work. And once we finally decide, communicate to stakeholders, make a decision, then they're able to implement quickly. So the technical skills are still there, but it takes a lot more than just being able to figure out space-time complexity to get a product out the door. So when I started to redesign the process, I had a couple of goals in mind and also a couple of constraints. One was I really wanted to make it efficient. We had been spending a lot of time as we have been hiring and building team. A lot of folks are coming in the funnel. We go through the process, spend a lot of time and energy, but don't end up hiring many people. Second part was retaining the engineering productivity. When engineers are spending time interviewing, filling up scorecards, going through the process, doing the debrief huddle, it takes a lot of time away from their actual work. So I wanted to get some time back to my teams. And I wanted the higher quality candidates on the virtual onsite. The onsite, which is typically, for most companies, will have about 4 to 5 interviews. It is the most expensive day or most expensive round of most of the companies. You have senior managers talking to the candidate. You got product folks talking to them. So you got about a day worth of time collectively from your team away for a candidate. And if this end up not being a good hire, it's a pretty expensive hit for the company. So I wanted to optimize for these things. And these are the couple things that are kind of highlights of what I did in order to fix it. I do have to say that it is an ongoing process. Just like software engineering, we take iterative approach. We try something, we monitor and observe, and we will keep changing it to make it better. One of the things we did, topmost, is all of our interview questions are now open book. What that means, whether you are doing a system design interview or doing a coding interview, it's open book. You can go to Google, you can go to Stack Overflow, you can look up the syntax, you can look at the API documentation. That's how real engineers do work in real life. I'm not trying to trick people or quiz onto their knowledge of how much they can memorize the syntax. Not really good use. Second thing we did, we actually delegated one of our initial technical screen to Byteboard. So what Byteboard assessment does is it kind of provides an opportunity for us to free up our time, do the assessment, but not only give a binary score, it also provides explanation and notes on how well this candidate did. And based on that, I can make a decision on maybe it's a good fit, maybe it's a good fit for a different team, and I can go from there. And third is we streamlined all the interviews for specific skills. So rather than asking the generic binary tree question to every candidate, our questions are catered towards the front-end engineer, back-end engineer, or the SREs, so that we get the most signal in the most optimized way. One thing that I had in the previous interview, we had project execution interview, and we also had team interview. We consolidated them into one. Now we are getting so much context in other interviews because they're project-based, we do not need multiple non-technical behavior interviews. So we can gain some signal in one interview, which we call core behavior. So this is how the process looks now. I've kind of highlighted the green outline, if you can pay close attention, to highlight what the big changes. So recruiter screen is still there, pretty critical for us to filter out. Even before that, a lot of people get filtered out after they apply. Right away after the recruiter thinks it's a good fit, we send them a Byteboard assessment. It's about 110 minutes of work, but after they have done it, we get a pretty good signal. We get the explanation and the notes, how they did on the interview, and what should we do after that. Not only that, the assessment tells us what skills they were strong at and what are the things they did not do too well. At this point, we have not spent any of our engineering time, which is great, because at this point, we already filtered out quite a few people. Currently, our screening rate on Byteboard assessment is about 37%. So only about 1/3 of people who clear are actually promoted to the next round. After that, a hiring manager interview will be there. Now I know this person is technically sound. I can focus on other skills. I can focus if this is a good team fit. I can share about the role to know if this candidate will like my team and the work we are doing. When they finally move to the on-site round, the virtual on-site round, my goal as a hiring manager screen is to not that, hey, is this person cool with his stories or technical solution, but I really want to see if they move to the final on-site round, do they have high probability of clearing that round? Because this is the most expensive thing we're going to do in this process. So I want to make sure through the funnel, when they get to on-site, they have a higher chance of clearing this interview. So I'm looking at their communication. I'm looking at their technical skills. I'm looking at the problem solving. In the final on-site, The coding interview, as I mentioned, is open book. It is problem solving and it is logic and critical thinking. However, you can look at syntaxes and you can find anything you want online to solve it. Then the project walkthrough is where you talk about a project that you have did, where you led or were part of it, and how did you overcome the challenges of that. That really helps me understand how this person worked in the context of a project. And the core behavior interviews really embodies our Webflow's core values. If someone worked with urgency in their heart, do they care for the customers, and they're trying to make a mark. This process is still in progress. However, we have seen excellent results. I want to share some impact numbers, because we like numbers here. Using the Byteboard assessment, as I mentioned, 37% people, only 37% get filtered out to the next round. About 480, about 500 hours or so is saved from engineering teams. And this is in just last four months or so. It's about 120 hours. This is pretty close to one full-time engineering bandwidth for my team. Also, when they go to the on-site, we have about 34% conversion rate. It might look low, but if you think about the on-site, it is a pretty rigorous interview process. So getting a 1/3 of people to get to offer stage is pretty high number. But we have filtered a lot of people before that. And then, not the least, we also care for the candidates. We want to make sure they have a good time and they enjoy interviewing with us and learning about us. So we have a pretty high NPS score. It results in faster and efficient onboarding, the people who are going through this process and getting hired. And as of now, we don't have any regrettable hires.
So the short and sweet of it here on what we're sharing is, one, we know that competency is rapidly changing. What it meant to be a good software engineer 20 years ago, it looks different than what it looks like 10 years ago and what it looks like now. And so we need to be adapting our interview processes and what we're looking for and evaluating for with engineers. What we've seen with the introduction of ChatGPT is that it's kind of claimed that interviews that focus on like plausible text or very, very fixed code answers are indeed dead. And I'm actually really excited about that because I've been wanting us to move away from that for a very long time. When you're looking at what the industry is moving forward to, and it's more project-based styled interviews that are more messy, more complex problems that actually can relay how an engineer would do on the job. So as you're reformatting your interview processes and you're looking at, what types of questions your interview process are actually asking today, want to focus on more of those real-world project-based type questions like Akash has done at Webflow. And at Byteboard, we've obviously been building out these technical project-based assessments, and we've been looking at how do we make sure, not just like how do we make these like ChatGPT proof, but actually how do we leverage ChatGPT in some ways? Folks are using this on the job just like they are using Google on the job, they're using Stack Overflow on the job. So in the near future, if not now, they're probably going to be starting to use ChatGPT to assist them in their interview itself. But how do we actually get them to display more complex thinking? How do they go and dive in deeper into their questions? So our interviews are purposely designed to be these complex, ambiguous project-based style questions that don't have a single answer. The answers actually are nuanced, can take different approaches, and it really showcases the individual's decision-making. So if you haven't modified your interview process yet and are looking to hire soon, I would recommend now's the time to start to get ahead of it overall. Byteboard is hosting office hours, so if you scan that QR code, and if you have any questions about what your interview process looks like today, how you want to adapt it, you can meet with our team for 15 minutes. We have a team of assessment developers, assessment engineers, and myself who spent a lot of time on this, so we're happy to review that with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hate LeetCode. I think everybody hates it. I hate all the things. We have so many questions, so I'm gonna go through them as fast as I can. We've not gotten this many questions. So number one, how is Byteboard different compared to an engineering doing LeetCode interview and capturing metrics?
So Byteboard interviews are designed to be like a real project. It starts with a design doc of sorts that they're actually filling out and answering questions on like how would they do and act in a situation given certain constraints, for example. And then they're actually working within an existing code base versus here's a LeetCode prompt. Let me just have it solve the unit tests that are involved. A lot more details to be said there, but in the short and sweet of it, that's the heart of it.
Yeah, I think there are quite a few questions they want to know, like, but how do you do it?
All right.
Because this all
Everyone at
sounds
Plotto
great, but
actually can take a Byteboard assessment for free. So if you reach out, you'll get 3 assessments for your team for free. So there's that as well.
That's really awesome. Next question makes me sad. How do you evaluate and hire talent for obscure but current relevant technologies? Example, C or PHP. I'm a C engineer at core. I'm a dinosaur, but anyway, how do you do it?
I would say most of the companies who are hiring smart engineers are not stuck on the technology or framework. They want to hire someone with good problem solving and critical thinking skills. And one thing we know, if someone is an engineer, they're good at learning. So we do not, particularly at Webflow, we don't really try to test for particular technology, but whatever technology they are comfortable in, and then whatever our tech stack is, they will work and learn with us.
And we do both. We offer those languages for the Byteboard assessments as well.
Okay, so not a dinosaur yet. All right, next question. Do you pay people for their work on project-based interview?
I have seen a lot of companies do this if they're doing extended interviews. So the ones that take 4 to 5 hours, which I can do a whole separate spiel on how your interview should never be that long. But the Byteboard assessments are purposely designed to be done under 2 hours. We've done a ton of research on this, particularly showing that folks can demonstrate their skills within the 2-hour mark without having to spend extra time. And so for those 2 hours that we do ask candidates, most companies do not pay them to do that part of the interview and actually end up streamlining the interview process to make it shorter anyway, so less time committed from the candidate itself.
Thank you. Next question. How do you ensure that the Byteboard assessment is connected to the actual job/role that you're hiring for? Because I imagine this might be different for different companies, right?
Yeah, well, I can share 2 cents here. I would say for the actual job and role, so Byteboard actually offers the option to upload even your own questions. Not I can go and modify the questions that candidate will be taking, but I can also bring my own that is more relevant to me. I can change, I can tweak them, so it is subjective to what I want to test.
And it's offered in like 7 different domains, everything from data engineering, SRE, front end, back end, across everything from intern to staff level positions. So depending on what role, what level you're hiring for, we have a specific assessment and a full rubric and job analysis that's done for that assessment as well.
Awesome. It's great to hear that there's flexibility. How does Byteboard and Webflow work to eliminate bias in your processes?
I can start with the Byteboard portion. So all Byteboard assessments are completely anonymized and evaluated double blind. So when we're evaluating it, we have no idea who this candidate is or even what company they're interviewing for. We're just looking at the performance of that candidate, and we have really, really objective criteria on how we assess that candidate to ensure limited bias or any bias coming into this the system. And the way that the interview itself is designed, you can speak to like LeetCode type questions actually are inherently biased because they favor candidates that have the ability, the time to study for those types of interviews. So when you're moving towards more project-based, open book, real world questions, you're actually creating a more fair interview process overall.
Anything to add?
Yeah, from Webflow perspective, till someone has completed the Byteboard assessment, we actually, when we look at the scorecard, it does not include the demographic information. So we don't have all the information that might bring our biases in play. So we are objectively looking at something that a candidate has done. Only recruiter has spoken to this person. So not only saving us engineering time, but does not really leak any information that could be biased. Thank you.
I'm glad to hear you're actually improving the bias problem. How has the role of engineering managers evolved in shaping and leading the technical interview process at Webflow?
how the role of engineering manager evolved. So at Webflow, every engineering leader is supposed to lead the team and build products, but also as a senior manager, my contributions are not limited to my team. I want to do something for the wider engineering org as well. Some people take on internship program. I took on interviewing and improving the interviewing because of my past experience and interest in this. As I mentioned at Asana, I led their apprenticeship program where we actually exclusively hired people who do not have a 4-year degree in computer science who are coming from boot camp or some other alternate walks of life. So this is very near and dear to my heart, so I picked this up. But different engineering managers take on different parts, how they contribute to the company.
All right, I know we're out of time, but I'm going to ask one more final question. Is the evaluation on Byteboard done by a human?
So the interviews are completely asynchronous. The candidate takes it in their own environment without anyone watching over them, but we do have humans in the loop when it comes to the actual evaluation of the interview after that candidate has completed. So it's not just passing it through an automated machine and be like, oops, you missed, a semicolon or something here and you failed your unit test. We actually can see a lot of that potential and nuance from that candidate as well.
Great, and with that, this talk is done. Thank you so much. I'm very excited for what you're building.